Last minute shakeup at 5:30 a.m., laundry situation not good. And when your focus is on helping your clients, it's easy to forget about yourself. But NASM knows trainers.
Morning, Ryan. Is your Taylor?
And staying in front of the day isn't always
Thanks,
as simple
Ryan.
as 1,
What's
2,
up?
3. So when the unexpected has you pressing pause,
What's the latest on creatine?
I'm going to get back to you on that.
let NASM1 help you press play. Visit NASM.org to sign up for a membership today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Strong Mind, Strong Body. I'm your host, Angie Miller, and today I have a very special guest. His name is Bobby Buoncristiano. I really hope I said that right. Bobby is an elite performance coach, and what we're talking about today is the mental fitness for life. I don't know about you, but fitness is very important to me, but more important than physical fitness is my mental fitness, and that's why I really wanted to have Bobby come on. He's going to talk about the benefits of physical training on brain function, energy, and focus, and how structured self-reflection can help us build daily routines that create sustainable success. So whether you're a fitness professional, a wellness enthusiast, or someone who's just seeking peak performance for life, I think you're here at the right place at the right time. So I'm going to bring Bobby in. How you doing, Bobby?
I'm doing well, Angie. Thanks for having me on.
Great. I'm glad you're on. So tell us a little bit about what you do.
Sure. Well, I work with a range of athletes, but specifically soccer players. So I'm on the performance side. So we're looking to help players perform better, but we're also looking to prevent injuries as much as possible. We like to call it injury risk reduction. So we're trying to avoid any kind of injuries that we possibly can.
Right. Well, because everybody knows, every sports enthusiast knows that's their biggest fear is one of their favorite athletes getting injured. And of course, it's an athlete's biggest fear. So, Bobby, you talk about, like, you always hear about elite athletes being in the zone. And when I think of being in the zone, I think of just completely forgetting that I'm doing something. I mean, obviously, I know I'm doing it, but I'm so in the zone that I'm actually enjoying it. I'm not thinking, oh my gosh, one more step or 5 more minutes. I'm actually just in the moment and it feels really good.
Right.
How do you think that everyday people, everyday wellness enthusiasts can access that same level of mental clarity in their daily lives?
Well, it's an interesting answer usually when I'm talking to athletes, but the way that we really try to access that in the zone is by harnessing the power of breathing. We want to make sure that when people are breathing, they understand the impacts that we're having on the central nervous system. So we talk a lot about trying to get ourselves into parasympathetic mode. So we're trying to think more rest and digest. And then we talk about sympathetic mode, and that's fight or flight. Oh my God, there's a bear. So what does that do? Not just to my mind, but physiologically, what's happening in my body? How is that changing things? What's going to happen as a result of being nervous or overly focused versus being nice and relaxed? I think we all know when you get into that zone, that's when, like you were saying, it kind of like lose track of time, right? Everything's just kind of flown by and then it's over as quick as it starts.
Yeah.
So that's when you know that you're really in there. So by really understanding that the more that I can focus on my breath and the more that I can keep myself calm, the more I can do to really stay in that zone and make sure that I'm nice and calm and I'm seeing everything that's happening.
Yeah, I actually think that makes a lot of sense because once in a while, not very often, I go and I have a meeting with the Stairmaster and I don't enjoy it. It's not like we're dating and we have a great relationship. We have almost an adversarial relationship. But I go there and I'm like, okay. And then I'm 5 minutes in and my mind starts going into, oh my gosh, there's no way you're going to be able to do this for 25 minutes. And then I have to rein it in,
Sure.
do a little bit of talking back and saying, no, actually I can. I have to use my breath. I have to stay present. I have to take it moment by moment, whether it be song by song or chapter by chapter in an audiobook. But I do think that breath and calm goes a long way, because
Right.
it's when we almost get like almost like hyper vigilant about the workout. Like I said, I'm going to do 30 minutes and I'm
Right.
going to, that it takes away all the enjoyment. So I think that's a great tip. Just using your breathing, staying centered, and trying to stay calm.
You know what else is important to realize whenever we're doing, workouts like that is most people don't want to do it. It's not that you're the only one who doesn't want to do it. It's most people dread things like that. I was an athlete myself my entire life, and there was plenty of sessions that I went into, and I didn't want to be there. But you have to understand what are the long-term goals. And, once you get rolling, it's one of the most important things is just like you were saying in those first 5 minutes, you're just kind of getting yourself together. And before you know it, you start to find yourself in that zone. You kind of come to grips with reality and you just get through it.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest. If you had a choice about having a glass of wine or a Diet Coke and, a big old piece of salmon and somebody saying, what can I get you? Probably most of us would choose that. But at the end of the day, we know that if we want to have mental fitness for life, we do have to work our body physically so that we increase our oxygen supply and all the good things that happen to us when we exercise.
Absolutely.
So, what do you think is the most surprising way that physical fitness impacts our mental performance?
Well, I think that a part that I love personally is when we're working out, we're having changes in the brain, right? So we are getting basically a release of what is something called, it's a protein called BDNF, brain derived nootropic factor. So whenever we're working out, we start to release this. And there's a book that I love by Dr. Rady. It's called Spark. So
Yes.
basically, it's all about exercise and brain function. I'm telling you, when I found this book, it was like one of those moments. I was in a Barnes and Noble and I'm walking down the aisle and the book jumped out at me. It was just one of those things where I just turned and it was like, huh, what's that? And I went over and grabbed it. So reading that book was a really important step for me in understanding the connection between the brain and the physical side of life, right? That
Yeah.
they're one and the same. And the more that I'm physically active and fit, the more that that's going to have impact on the brain and my overall function on a daily basis.
I love that book so much. It's on my bookshelf. I want him to be
Nice.
on my podcast. I really do. I think, and he too, and honestly, that same story, he was the first one that really made me understand what's happening. And so go back to the Stairmaster thing. Yeah, I don't always want to do it, but yes, I know if I can use my breath and I can stay calm, and because I know the brain benefits, it's worth it. It's worth it. So, I mean, there's a lot of choices we can all make, but I want to choose to do what I can to keep my brain healthy. It's a choice. Now, I don't have a choice of the long-term outcome, but I do have a choice over what I do as a preventative measure, right?
Absolutely. And for me, knowing that I was getting those specific benefits from, exercising and doing these things, and it just makes it easier to do. Right. So if you're going to get up at 5:30 in the morning to go out for a run, that's not going to be easy. Right. Nobody really is like, oh, popping out of bed, being excited about it. Maybe some people, depends, I guess. But when
Really sick, twisted people. No, I'm kidding.
but when you understand that you're getting that like big benefit from it and you start to see the areas of your life that this is going to impact, for me personally, it just makes it so much easier to do.
Yeah, 100%. It really does.
Yeah.
So you help athletes perform under high pressure situations.
Mhm.
And I feel like for a lot of us, whether we're fitness trainers or wellness coaches or we're everyday enthusiasts, there's some area of our life where we're under more pressure than others. There just is. I don't care what it is that you do in the real
Sure.
world. There are times and places where you have more pressure. For me, it's as a speaker. The bigger the room, the more pressure there is, right? And so, what's one mental training technique that you think is most valuable for handling everyday stress, whether it's intense pressure or everyday stress?
I think that's a two-part answer. And the first thing that I think is so important, and I think that we can all relate to this, is the visualization aspect of it. Understanding what you're about to go through, right? So we all, whatever we're doing, whether we're public speaking, whether we're playing in a game, we know what the demands are going to be, and we can understand the pressure that's going to put on us. So the more that we can really understand what it is that we're up against, the better off we'll be. And the other part is the reflection piece. So whenever we're doing things, we need to, whether it's your second time, third time, fifth time, you need to look back on past experiences and learn from those, assessing those things clearly, right? Like looking back and saying, like, I did these things well, I could do these things better. And then based on that, we can really grow and learn. So I think what it is really taking a realistic look at what we're doing, what we've done, and how we can do these things better. And really, I wouldn't say completely take emotion out of everything, because that's impossible. But you really want to look at things for what it is versus how it made you feel, because that's part of it too. But it's really understanding what we're up against, and then we can kind of work through the emotional part of that as well.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that, because I'm not as good about the visualization. I'm anyway, but what I am better at is the reflection piece. Like every time I go to speak to a new community of people, I remind myself that people are people. And often I speak about stress. And so I tell myself, everybody at the end of the day, no matter who they are in their day-to-day role, if you will, we're all kind of our same core self, and we all deal with stress. It might look different as an engineer than it does as a police officer, but everybody faces stress. And so for me, it's that reflection piece of saying, hey, you've spoken to humans for how many years now? These are just humans, right? And so to your point, it's whether you're an athlete on the field or an athlete in life, it's kind of that idea of saying, you've been through stressful situations and you called upon your strengths to do that. And so now how can your strengths get you through this stress? Am I on the right page with that?
I couldn't agree more. I like the connection that you made there, where I talk to my players about this a lot. Like, you're a soccer athlete today, or a basketball athlete, whatever you may be playing, but eventually that ends and your life continues. So then you're going to be a competitor and athlete in life. So there's so many parallels that you can draw from games into real life. For example, I like to talk to my players about the relationship that you have with your coach today is the relationship that you're going to have with your boss in the future. Your teammates, they're going to be your coworkers as you move forward. So you start to understand and draw these parallels between sport and life. And to your point, as you're talking about, just remembering that we're all people, we all have insecurities, we all get nervous, we all get scared, and that's okay. That's part of it. Everybody else feels that way. If you don't feel that way, that's probably an issue, right? So you should feel that way. It's natural to be nervous. It's natural to be scared. It's how do we take all of those things and harness that power, right? Because it's all energy that we're feeling at the end of the day. And how do we harness all that and use it the best way possible?
I like that relationship idea, because I always tell clients and students, and you name it, that your relationship that you have with your family, you're going to take those same dynamics into your everyday life. If you're a combative person, you're probably going to be combative at work. If you're not necessarily a good listener, or it's your way or the highway, you're going to take that into your work. So relationships are relationships. Yes, family relationships have a different dynamic, and we're more likely to be our best and our ugliest self. But at the same time, if we get very, very comfortable with coworkers, those same dynamics can kick in, and they don't always serve us. So I like that. I kind of like that idea of saying, hey, learn to function in every situation, because those skills are skills, whether you're playing for life or playing for sport. So
absolutely. Yeah. I like what you said there about listening. And that's the key. That's something we talk to athletes about all the time. If you don't have the ability to listen and take in that information, like, it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to apply any of that information. If you're not able to apply that information, your performance is going to decrease, and that's going to have a cascading effect, where I tell everyone, the players I work with, if you can't listen, get comfortable on the bench, because we're all working as a team together. We all depend on each other, whether that's sport or life. We're all trying to work towards a common goal. And if you're not applying things properly, you're going to get in the way of that process. And then we're going to find someone who can.
Yeah.
So it's really, it all comes down to listening. It's number one. If you can't do that, you're going to have a real tough time performing at higher levels.
Well, and the thing is that who does everyone want to be around? Somebody who's a really good listener, just somebody who can hold space for other people. And it was so funny. I was talking to my daughter last night, and she was like, "If you say hold space one more time," and I was like, "Okay, if you can hold a container for other people." She goes, "Nope, not that one either." So anyway, whatever.
Right.
Here's the key: listen, just listen, and offer people an available space where it's safe for them to talk about what they want to talk about. And to your point, for athletes, it's important because if they're not listening, they're not playing the game well, because they're not hearing the information that they need in order to make the plays that you want them to make in order to work together as a team. So I want to reintroduce you. So my name is Angie Miller. This is Strong Mind, Strong Body, and we are talking about mental fitness for life. For me, yes, physical fitness is all that in a bag of chips, but mental fitness means even more. And so I am talking to Bobby, Buoncristiano, and Bobby is an elite performance coach. And he's kind of talking about these ways that we build our mental fitness, and how we approach that and how we build mental fitness for life. So, Bobby, a lot of people we know, because January's coming and people start strong with these routines, but then they struggle to maintain them. What's the key difference, do you think, between athletes who sustain habits and then those of us who maybe don't? I mean, I get into a habit of not eating chocolate until I don't. And I want to know the secret sauce to maintaining that habit.
Sure. Well, I don't
Okay.
know if I have the exact secret sauce, but I think I have a pretty good method. And what that is in order to stay on path, you really need to understand what are your long-term goals in all of this. So by establishing 1, 2, and 5-year plans, I realize that sounds a little scary to people sometimes. It's really what's going to help you stay the course when you get to tougher times, because you need to realize what you're working toward, right? So like we're saying, if you want to avoid this, or you want to give up that, or you want to do extra in order to get there, reminding yourself of what that goal is and where we're going is so important. It's without that ultimate goal, it really makes it tough to stick to any sort. You can't even have a plan, let alone stick to a plan, without understanding where it is that we're going.
Yeah.
And I have this one quote that I absolutely love. It came from J.J. Watt, NFL football player. And he was being interviewed, and they were talking to him about all the success that he had achieved in the NFL, Defensive Player of the Year, and all these kind of things. And his response to it was, "My life has been a series of small goals." And I love that, because we all see the end goal. A soccer player, you want to be Messi or Ronaldo, and that's great. They're at the top of the mountain, but they also climb that mountain. And they had little goals along the way in order to get them to the place. Of course, they have God-given talent. Those guys are unbelievable. But at the end of the day, there was a certain steps that they needed to take in order to get to where they're at. And we all need to remind ourselves, they didn't wake up there. Nobody just got to the top. That whole overnight success story, that's not how it goes. It's like, I've heard people in the past say, yeah, it was a 10-year overnight success story. People have been working for a real long time. And it's important to understand there's a ton of work that went into getting them to that point. So when you can understand that, see that, and then you remind yourself when you're on your journey that you're not alone. We're all in this together. We're all working hard. We're all trying to get better. And it requires that discipline. It requires sacrifice, but it's not a bummer either. It's actually a very positive thing. So as you're looking at all these little sacrifices you're making along the way, I like to think of that as money in the bank versus paying back a loan. Because nobody likes paying back a loan. Everybody likes putting money in the bank. So as we realize these things we're doing for ourselves are making us better and better, it's a more positive perspective on fitness.
Yeah.
Mental fitness, physical fitness. I'm putting more into it. I'm getting more from it. So that's a more positive framework to look at it from.
It's so funny because I use that analogy all the time. I always say, I'm making a deposit today.
Nice.
Today I'm making a deposit. I'm going to the gym. I'm going to make a deposit. It's a positive deposit. But to your point, it depends on what the goals are. When I was younger, my goals were very different when I exercised. My goals for exercise were literally about maintaining a certain physique. Now my goals are 100% about mental fitness and emotional health. And I think that you have to have that long-term goal. And even when people say, well, I'm here because I want to lose 5 pounds. My next question is, and how will your life be different? And so I don't want to, because I want them to know that it's not just about the 5 pounds, it's about the impact on their life. Like, what do you think you'll feel like if you lose 5 pounds? What do you think that will do? How will that impact your life? Because I want them to really think through it, get underneath all the layers of what do those 5 pounds really signify to you? And often there's just an emotional attachment to those 5 pounds. Well, when I was 5 pounds lighter, I like the way my clothes fit. I had more confidence. So now we're getting into confidence. Now we're getting into things that matter more than 5 pounds, right? So I think that's a key thing. Long-term goals matter. So have you had one of your athletes over the years just have a major mental breakthrough and kind of that changed their attitude or their belief system or their outlook on life and sport?
Well, I would like to think that I had a lot of athletes do that, but what one pops into mind in particular, a player that I have, he's actually out playing at Stanford right now. He so in soccer it's called a yellow card, right? So if you get a caution, right? So you do a foul that's a little over the top. It's not necessarily a red card where you get ejected from a game. It's more of a caution. It's like, hey, if you get two of these, you have to go. Anyhow, throughout a season, there's what's called accumulation. So once you get to 5, you have to sit for a game. So he sends me a text and he says, I'm on 4 yellow cards. And we start to talk about it. So I ask him, what's going on with this? How did you get these cards? Blah, blah, blah. So we go back and forth. So we had this conversation about decisions that you make when you play and how we're more in control of these chaotic moments than we actually think. So we talked about, what happened in these cards? What could you have done differently? And in the future, what could you do to control yourself? So he started to think about it, and we go back and forth, and he had about 10 games left in the season. So he kind of texts me and he goes, yeah, I think you're right. He goes, I was like emotional about a couple of these fouls and all this kind of stuff. So he ends up going through the rest of the season without getting another card. So he gives me a call and he says, I got all the way through. He goes, you were totally right. They were all decisions that I made. And I said, so understand you were able to make those decisions in those chaotic environments in a game. I said, think about how much control you have over your decisions in life.
Yeah.
And think about how broadly that impacts you. We get emotional, we have a moment, but if we can check our emotion and understand like, hey, this is just a feeling right now. And once again, like we talked about getting to that broader picture, you can really make better decisions and you have more control over this than you think.
I like that a lot. Feelings are fleeting, and the thoughts that
Mhm.
we think aren't always true. And I think that there's so much to be said for where do you have control? And so many times when things go wrong, whether it's in life or on the field, it isn't about he said this or she said that and he did this and I don't like this person. It's about and those things might be true. And what role are you playing? What did you say? What was your role in that situation? Because that's the only role you have control over. So let's not get caught up in what's wrong with that other person. While they might have their faults, so do we. And so you put it back on your player. And to me, what I hear you say is that's where he had the mental breakthrough was you gave him the opportunity to look at where he has power, and his power
Right.
lies within his decisions. Doggone it, if we could make bumper stickers that say that, I think we'd all do better. Your power lies in your own darn decisions, not
Sure.
everyone else's. Let's make a
Yeah.
bumper sticker. Okay.
There you go.
All
I
right.
like
So I like that one. So, Bobby, I do have to ask you before we go. I have to ask you about this lifestyle scaffolding because you
Sure.
you mentioned to me that you talk about lifestyle scaffolding, but I am waiting. Like, what is this? What do you mean by it?
Sure. It's funny. I have my little prototype right here, my player journal prototype.
Oh boy.
So yeah, we'll be putting this into a nicer format. So What we're looking at there is essentially getting all of the controllables under control. So we look at our schedule. So we start by saying, what time do I have to wake up every morning? What time do I have to be at school? What time am I in training? And then once we start to put together those larger time commitments, then we start to say, okay, where can I put my meals in? Okay, breakfast, snack, lunch, snack. So we start to put all these down into the proper times that they go in. And then what time am I going to go to bed tonight? And then from there, we're understanding the connection between when I need to go, when I wake up, when I need to go to bed. Now we're tracking our sleep cycle as well. We have all of our meals lined up, all of those different things that we have, all the obligations for our day, being in school, getting out of school, getting the training, whatever that may be, getting to work. It doesn't really matter. I think you understand we're putting down the larger points. So we're trying to get all those things nice and organized. So from there, we're not making decisions on the fly. It's not like, oh, when's the last time I ate? Oh, I'm not really sure. I got to grab something now. We're putting things more on a schedule and a time frame. Now, when I do this with the players, I'm not necessarily asking them what they eat to begin with. It's just, let's get down those times and let's just put them on the schedule. So we understand this. We'll eat here, and then we'll work on, getting better foods in and all that kind of stuff. And then from there, I like to look at the journaling aspect of it. So when we journal, bring you back to my nice little prototype here, it's not just a journal about how you played. It's not all about your sport and all that. It's about, how am I doing personally? How are my relationship with family and friends? How are things going, school or work? And what am I looking at in the future? So by putting all these things down, it's so important that we're writing these things down and having a better understanding of what's going on. So all these things that are going on, swirling around us, they all add up into the one person that you are, right? So if you want to be a great athlete, if you want to be, a great professional, whatever it is that you want to do, you have to take all these other things into consideration in order to become that. It can't just be, I have a crazy life and then I'm a great athlete. It doesn't really work like that. When you have all these things swirling around you, you can end up, that pulls down who you are on the field, in the workspace, wherever that is. And to come back to the 1, 2, and 5 year plans, they're so important. Like we said, we need to understand where we're going, and that is ultimately going to help us develop that path to get to where we want to go. We want to be precise in the steps that we're taking. We don't want to be random. So the more that we have that goal in mind, the more that we can see what that path is. And once you really have all of that, so setting up all that scaffolding around what it is that we're trying to do really helps strengthen our path on our way there. So we're just taking all the things into consideration that may be outside of that and making sure that we're organized. We understand what we're doing today. We understand where we're going, and we can feel good about that. We have a little bit more control over an otherwise chaotic process.
That's really good. I really appreciated that a lot. It's really about day-to-day goals, weekly goals, monthly goals. It's really just about having a plan. It's about the difference between throwing darts and seeing what sticks, and then actually having a game plan and kind of knowing that life and sport go together. And you can't say you're a great athlete if your home life is chaotic, and you can't say that you've got a great home life, but it all goes together. So I think the scaffolding is really just saying we're going to build blocks that lead to our best self on the field and in life. So Bobby, I really appreciate you coming on and talking about mental fitness for life. I think it's a perfect time of year to talk about it because we're going into the new year. And I do think that all of us are considering ways, always, that we can improve our mental and our emotional and our physical health. So, Bobby Buoncristiano, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for sharing all of your insight and knowledge with us. And if someone had a question for you, could you just quickly kind of tell us where they could reach you?
Sure. If you wanted to see what I'm doing on YouTube, I'm at SAID Performance, SAID Performance, Specific Adaptation to Imposed Demands. And if you wanted to reach me, you could reach me at Bobby, Bobby, at saidperformance.com.
Awesome. All right. Thank you for sharing that. And thanks to all of you for listening to Strong Mind, Strong Body. I wish you an amazing week, and we'll see you next week.